morning, Eddie. Before we come on to the match, just want to ask you firstly about Alexander Isak, and has anything changed over the last couple of days with his situation?
No, there's been no change.
So he, again, won't be part of your squad? Is that your expectation?
Yeah, no, he won't be part of the squad for this weekend's game.
Over the summer, you've answered a lot of questions about him, but earlier this week there was an exchange of words publicly. He published a statement. The club responded quite quickly. Is it helpful to you that there is now other communication about this situation coming from the club, coming from higher up?
Yeah, I'd always say my preference for these things is it doesn't happen publicly, because I think everything is better dealt with behind closed doors, but needs must, and in this situation the club has spoken, and probably justifiably so in that moment.
And is it still your hope that he can be reintegrated into the squad, even if that is dependent on him?
Yeah, of course. He's contracted to us, he's our player. My wish is that he would be playing on Monday night with us, but he won't be, and that's regrettable at this moment. But he, 100%, I want to see him back in a Newcastle shirt.
I wonder how you're dealing with this unique situation with Alex. How are you dealing with it personally?
I think, of course, these situations are far from ideal, as in talking press-wise, and a lot of the attention has gone on to that rather than the team and our preparation. But in terms of, as soon as I leave here, I'm back with the team. I'm back preparing, training, taking training, delivering meetings, speaking to individual players, trying to get the group in the best frame of mind possible. So the job never changes. Just the outside perception is, of course, one that's totally different to normal.
I guess you're seeing Alex, though, aren't you? Because he's arriving in the afternoon to do his own training, and you're still here. Are you having conversations with him, and how is your relationship with him despite all this that's going on?
Yeah, I haven't seen him this week, I don't think. I saw him last week. Yeah, when I see him, we speak as normal. There's no issues there between us. Of course, it's a difficult situation from both sides, and I can see it's far from ideal for both parties, and that includes Alex and us. But no, when we see each other, we're fine and we speak. But as I say, I haven't run into him this week. He's training later on and detached from the group, and of course then I'm in meetings and pulled all over the place during the day. My days are chaotic because there's so much going on in them. But we will, I'm sure, catch up at some stage and hopefully speak soon.
And with every day that passes closer to the deadline, it's increasingly likely that Alex will be a Newcastle player beyond the end of the transfer window. You said that the door is wide open for him. How do you turn the situation around and reintegrate him well as part of the group?
I think that's probably a conversation for another day. At the moment, that is not an option for us. So rather than talk hypotheticals, I'd rather talk when we get there, when we get to that point, and then, of course, we'll enter that phase and see what we need to do to try and get the best for Alex, get the best for the team, which is always the priority. But until that point, I think we're best focusing on the players we have available for the next game.
OK, more from Eddie Howe throughout the day on Sky Sports News. Here's a reminder of what he has just said. He said there is no change. Alexander Isak will not be part of the squad to take on Liverpool in the Monday night football. He says, my wish is that he would be playing. He won't be. That's regrettable. But 100% I want him back in a Newcastle shirt. He says he hasn't seen or spoken to him this week and says it's far from ideal for both parties, both Isak and Newcastle. What do you think we learnt from hearing from Eddie Howe just now?
That he's not spoken to Isak. I mean, people.
Is that a surprise?
Yes and no. Yes for me, because you're in the same training ground. Yes, he's training in the afternoon, but Eddie Howe is probably there. But people say, hey, OK, how can that happen? Normally, the manager in the afternoons is then doing the behind-the-scenes work. He's obviously press, media, meetings, reviewing games, analysing games, speaking to scouts behind the scenes, preparing for next game. So he's busy Isak comes in, maybe he's in a different area, doing his thing, changed, gone, whatever. So those things can happen, of course. But I just think that Eddie Howe's getting very frustrated with it. I think clearly Isak's very frustrated because I think there's been a lot of talk about Isak and you know, how can he do this? There's clearly, and based on his statement, there's clearly some promises that were made. And he said, the club's known my position for a long time. Now, players can do that. And there's been lots of players that have said, listen, I want to leave. And clearly, that might have been at the end of last season that he said this. And there's been promises. And those promises have been broken. And then he's frustrated and said, listen, well, I'm about loyalty. And if you said this and I believe I'm going to be sold, then why are you not doing that? So there's been a clear, miscommunication, breakdown. But I think Eddie Howe wants the matter closed as soon as possible. And I think he's really waiting, and he can't wait for the transfer deadline, because at that point, either Liverpool are going to come in and say, here's the money, we'll take the player, and it meets the required amount of money, or he's a Newcastle player. Right now, I believe it's 50-50, to be honest, because there's a lot of money that's demanded for him, and even probably Isak. I think probably the one thing that frustrates Isak is he's probably thinking, you're asking too much money for me. I'm not worth that. And I think that's what he's thinking. If it is, for example, 110, 115, maybe 120, he's probably thinking, guys, Newcastle, that's enough. I don't think I'm worth more than that. You should take it. So I think that's part of the discussion and the frustration from Isak's side.
Well, Newcastle value him at £150 million, reportedly. In terms of this situation being resolved, you said it's 50-50, what happens? If he stays at Newcastle, and you'd have been there as a player yourself, and you'd have been in squads where players have had to be reintegrated after situations like this, just how difficult is that? Or once he plays, if he scores, do things completely change it and go back to normal? Or can they ever go back to normal?
I think in this situation, if he stays at Newcastle, I believe there would be some kind of apology from him to the team, because I think you're still in the team environment, and the other players in that dressing room would probably want an apology to say, listen, you didn't want to play for us for the last few weeks. They probably know the reasons why. I'm sure that's quite open in the dressing room. But at the same time, then, if he does stay, does apologise, players, to be honest with you, in the dressing room, they'll quickly welcome him in because they know he's a quality player. He's going to score goals. He's going to help them. He's a world-class player. That's I don't think we have to say that. But at the same time, I think he will fit straight in. I think he won't have a problem once he apologises and says, listen, guys, I'm ready to play. Let's go. But listen, I think it's going to get messier as the transfer deadline comes. And I don't think this is really going to be a quick fix. Because I think there's been a lot of breakdown between Newcastle and Isak.
Well, it's certainly going to be an incredible atmosphere on Monday night. A reminder, you can see Newcastle take on Liverpool in what could be a blockbuster Monday night football. Watch it on
about Alexander Isak. Eddie Howe says there's been no change in the situation regarding the striker, but he still wants to see him play for Newcastle again. Isak won't be involved in Newcastle's game against, wouldn't you know it, Liverpool on Monday night.
My preference for these things is it doesn't happen publicly, because I think everything is better dealt with behind closed doors, but needs must, and in this situation the club has spoken, and probably justifiably so in that moment. He's contracted to us, he's our player. My wish is that he would be playing on Monday night with us, but he won't be, and that's regrettable at this moment. But he, 100%, I want to see him back in a Newcastle shirt.
Are you having conversations with him, and how is your relationship with him despite all this that's going on?
Yeah, I haven't seen him this week, I don't think. I saw him last week. Yeah, when I see him, we speak as normal. There's no issues there between us. Of course, it's a difficult situation from both sides, and I can see it's far from ideal for both parties, and that includes Alex and us. no, when we see each other, we're fine and we speak. But as I say, I haven't run into him this week.
So, Dara, Eddie Howe has said he 100% wants to see Alexander Isak back in a Newcastle shirt. If you were to put a percentage on it, what is the likelihood of that happening?
It's the never-ending saga, isn't it? Look, Eddie has a class act. You know, you see him there, he handles... You can tell why he's a player's manager, why players love playing for him. What an England manager he would have been, by the way. But, you know, he's now in a position he didn't expect to be in after winning a cup and having a good season last year. So he needs this, you know, one way or another to be resolved. And after this Liverpool game on Monday, I guess we're going to find out. If that deal's not agreed by Tuesday, Wednesday, it's done. You know, and I think he's staying there. So I couldn't give you a percentage on it because things change in football. If you were putting bets on this, you could lose your house because you just don't know how it's going to go. I said yesterday, sell him, move on, go buy a couple of players and take the drama away from your dressing room. He, as a manager, doesn't deserve this.
It's classic that it's Liverpool up next, isn't it? You couldn't write it.
You couldn't write it. I agree. You know, Jamie Carragher said something in one of his columns this morning about Liverpool need another plan B. And I agree with him there. We're short in attacking options. And if we've gone all in on this, hoping this happens, we could end up with egg on our faces if Newcastle end up keeping him and we don't have a plan B, and then one of our wide players gets injured or one of our attacking players gets injured. We've already got 2 right backs injured. So as much as everyone's excited about Liverpool, the recruitment, the business they've done, I'm worried there that, you know, we could end this window weaker in the attacking departments than we started the window.
We will definitely get into Liverpool shortly. Let's stay on Newcastle for a bit. Sky Sports have partnered with Fanalysis, an app where passionate fans known as fanalists share their opinions on their club. We can now cross to Newcastle fanalist Paul Ditchburn. Good morning to you, Paul. Eddie Howe says he 100% wants to see Isak back in a Newcastle shirt. Do you think you will?
As I'm sitting here now, I can't see a way back for him. I've tried to think about this over the summer numerous times, and I just can't see how he reintegrates back into the side. With what's been said, the statement he released at the weekend, during the week, and then Newcastle's response. Eddie stays very diplomatic through it all, as he always has done. As you say, he's a class act. However, he faces a monumental task trying to get this all sorted out before, if he stays after the transfer window.
Paul, yesterday, and I said it again today, whatever else, do you agree with me as majority of Newcastle fans? Sell him, get the most money, go buy a Nicholas Jackson and one other striker, because you've already got some great wide attacking options. You're going to score goals in that team. So move past this and move past as quick as you can. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it's dragged on for far too long. It's become a bit of a farce. Eddie Howe's press conference this morning, all he was asked was about Isak, not about the game on Monday, which is a huge game for Newcastle United as it is. So it's becoming very, very difficult. Look, we've got to be careful here and not take a low ball offer for him. We've stuck by the 150 million valuation, and I think the club have been pretty hard on that all summer. But we do need to look beyond Alexander Isak now and think we don't have a striker there at the moment. You know, Gordon's having to play there. He's not an out-and-out striker. It's a very, very difficult situation to be in. So, yes, I would rather that he left. We got a couple of strikers in to do the job, and we rebuild after Alexander Isak. I just think the whole situation is blown way out of proportion now.
Paul, do you feel let down? Has Alexander Isak thrown his toys out of the pram here, or does he have a point? Was he made promises that have been broken?
I don't think we'll ever know what promises came from who, to be honest. I think whoever's promised him isn't at the club anymore. And if he was promised something, then why didn't he get it in writing? Surely this day and age, everything business-wise, you put in writing just so you can come back to it eventually. However, he didn't do that, and Newcastle were pretty adamant in their statement during the week that nobody there has promised him anything. So for me, I believe the club over Isak. I have to say, he has badly let the club down, but he's badly let the fans down as well. The fans' reaction has been terrible towards him. He faces a real uphill task trying to get the fans back on side as well. So, yes, he's badly let everybody down with his behaviour. It's just a real shame.
Dara, the day and age of gentlemen's agreements, have they gone out the window?
There's no such thing. And this, somebody made a promise. It's a he said, she said situation. We don't know the truth. So why doesn't he grow a pair and come out and name the person? The reason he hasn't is because he'd get sued, because that person would deny that ever happened. So this is just a typical footballer wants out, wants his dream move. Now let's talk to the agent, come up with these different things, and let's create confusion around the situation. Like I said, I'm bored by the whole thing. I'm sure Newcastle fans are. I'm sure Eddie Howe doesn't want to sit in every press conference and talk about the same thing. He's got a squad that's in the Champions League. He wants to get on with it. He's the top-class manager. Newcastle and him really need... If I'm the manager, I'm saying, sell him. 150 we're not going to get. Get 120, 130. What's 20 million difference at this stage? Let me go get 2 other players and get on with our season.
The question then, Paul, is who do you get with that money? Who's top of your wish list?
Well, there's been a few top of my wish list over the summer which hasn't come to fruition, unfortunately.
Which Liverpool managed to nab one of already, right?
Yeah. I mean, Ekitike was a fantastic option for us, but look, it hasn't happened. We have to look at who's available now, and Strand Larsen's been mentioned a lot. I think I would prefer him over Nicholas Jackson, if I'm openly honest. I think Jackson, I haven't been that impressed with him, to be honest. I mean, his discipline has been terrible in the Premier League. We saw that firsthand last season. However, at this stage now, we need a striker. So if it was to be Jackson, I'd support him fully.
Eddie Howe turns Nicholas Jackson into a top-class player, in my opinion. And with the wide attacking options you have and that crowd behind him, you could turn that player into a 20-goal-a-season striker in the Premier League. So for me, if he's 60, 70 million and you're getting that much for Isak, take the deal.
Well, I think, Eddie Howe has been renowned for bringing players on. There's no doubt about that. He's got a fantastic reputation for doing that. And that's what we always say up here. When we're unsure about a player joining, we always look to the point of, well, look who he's going to be working for. And that's Eddie Howe.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's massive for us. And the way he's brought players on, changed the way some of them play, like Joe Linton, for instance.
Yep.
He brings them on.
Discipline issues,
yes,
all
I
those
agree
things.
on that, son.
Yeah, he'll clean all of that up. So I don't know what they're waiting for. Chelsea want to sell him. There's a deal there to be done. And this cloud could lift very quickly. So I'm not quite understanding why it's getting dragged out. I get you don't want him playing against you on Monday night or your own player or being involved or whatever. But I
don't think he would, though. I don't think he would. If he signed, he wouldn't play.
He's not fit probably to play. But I think the bottom line is this is just a drama that everyone could do without. And like I said, it's getting a bit boring now.
What about, Paul? You mentioned Jurgen Strand Larsen, who, 60 million sounds like an awful lot of money, but the game's gone in terms of price tags for strikers these days. Yeah. I don't think Wolves want to sell him, but what do you think about him as a player?
I wasn't sure at first, but then again, you look at his stats from last season. Wolves weren't great last year. They did get a little bit better as the season went on. He's big, he's bulky, he's strong. Somebody that could, really ruffle the feathers of centre-backs, which is what we need. Anthony Gordon at the moment, as good as he is of a footballer, he's not going to do that. He's not got the physicality. We need a bit of physicality in that penalty area, whether it be Larson, whether it be Jackson. We have to have some kind of physicality, and we've just got nothing up front at the moment in that context.
And the irony, of course, as I said to Dara, that it's Liverpool up next as well. A bit of extra spice in that fixture now. Yeah.
I don't think it really needs any extra spice anyway. If you look at the historical results or games between us and Liverpool, they've always been fantastic occasions. It's under the lights at St James's Park. Yes, it does give an extra edge to the game without a shadow of a doubt. The crowd will be incredible. The atmosphere will be amazing, as it always is under the lights. It'll be a great spectacle for the Premier League, and I think that's what we need to concentrate on and forget about this Isak stuff and concentrate on what will be a fantastic football match between two excellent sides.
And joining us are Martin Hardy from The Times and the Daily Mail's Ian Ladyman. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. It seems there's only really one story in town. You can see it, the main focus of The Guardian. Alexander Isak has broken his silence and indeed is accusing Newcastle of broken promises. The headline in The Guardian, the relationship can't continue. He says Newcastle trust is lost in a withering statement. There's also a big focus on Mo Salah and Mariona Caldente winning the big gongs at the PFA Awards. We'll get into that a bit later as well. But the Isak story is reported on the back page of The Sun like this. Broken record. Broken. Isak says trust is gone. Record. Liverpool prepare £130 million bid. And Salah is also there. He's done the treble. He's a PFA Player of the Year for the third time. And the Telegraph's look at the Isak story is my trust is lost. And I'll tell you what, we'll start with the one that was on screen right there, because I like what The Sun have done with their headline. Martin, Ian, we'll come to you first. The broken record is an interesting play on the two elements of Alexander Isak's statement, in that he says that promises have been broken and now that Liverpool are coming in. Let's focus on Isak first. We'll get to Liverpool. What do you make about this statement and the timing of the statement, Ian?
Yeah, I noticed earlier you described it as a bombshell, and other people are using that word. I mean, is it a bombshell or is it just the next phase, the next rather predictable and sadly obvious phase in what has become a pretty dismal campaign by Isak and his people to get him out of Newcastle? I mean, these things often play out in a similar way. A player may tell a club that he's unhappy, and if that doesn't work, then their agent may drip feed bits of information to get the story spinning. And if that doesn't work, then the player might start to behave badly by not wanting to play, not wanting to train. And if that doesn't work, then occasionally you get to this nuclear option. And this is a nuclear option that Isak has taken tonight to press the button, tell the world exactly what he feels. We've spoken before about the trust he claims, his people claim, and now he's alluding to the fact that they think that Newcastle agreed a year or so ago to listen to offers for Isak. He says yesterday he wanted to play at what he sees to be a bigger club. Newcastle have denied that. I know there's also suggestion from our Newcastle reporter Craig Howe that some of this trust issue may also relate to the promise of a new contract that hasn't come to fruition either. Whatever the case, Newcastle have a deeply unhappy, problematic player on their hands now. This is a problem that the size of which Eddie Howe, in terms of a player, has probably certainly never dealt with before. And I'm sure Martin will have his ideas about about what the resolution may be, but at the moment, with 2 weeks to go towards the end of the window, that resolution seems an awful long way away.
Certainly does. Martin, Ian mentions the nuclear option. It does seem that Alexander Isak has pressed the red button, or perhaps pressed the Reds button.
Yeah, where on earth to start with all this? Just been speaking to my office then, and yet another crazy night because of Alexander Isak. And just said, what's the next phase? Does he throw his Carabao Cup winners medal into the River Tyne? Does he appear in a Sunderland strip and start singing Wise Men Say? We've kind of, in the middle of June the 24th, we ran a story that Newcastle were preparing to make him the best paid player in the club's history. And it was because they were fearful of an approach from Liverpool Football Club. We'd also done a story, I think, about April or March, that Isak was privately saying that he wanted to play for a competitive Champions League club. So this has been there. The contacts that we spoke to in June were kind of trying to see how it would play out. They said eventually Liverpool will make an offer, which they have done. Newcastle would say no and insist the player is not for sale, which is what they have done. And the contacts then said it will be left to Alexander Isak and his agent, Vlado Lemic, to cause as much chaos as they possibly can to try and bring the move about. In the middle of June, June the 24th, and I said to a close family member, I said, out the blue, I think Isak will move to Liverpool. And as you can imagine, that met with huge disappointment in the Northeast. The last couple of days after Newcastle have failed with bids for João Pedro, Hugo Ekitike and Benjamin Sesko, the dial has slightly started to drop in terms of how sure I felt that he would go. So it's interesting that he must have, I know it's the time to coincide with the PFA Team of the Year tonight, which he is obviously in, to nobody's surprise. But he may have felt also that the power in that situation for him was starting to drop. The chances of him getting that move start to drop because Liverpool are insisting that they will not be held to ransom on this deal. And they are particularly proud of their transfer and recruitment record. Therefore, they do not want to be seen, I think, to jump from 110 million to 130 million, which is a significant percentage jump. They also will then have the rest of that deal, which we assume is going to be the figures that he wanted from Newcastle, but which Newcastle cannot afford, of around £300,000 a week. You put that across 5 years, that's hitting you for over £75 million before you talk about Champions League bonuses, everything else, signing on fees, all the other elements that go inside that deal. So that's a deal that could be worth over £200 million to Liverpool. And that's not to be sniffed at. Yes, they want the player, but they're still going to try and play hardball, and we may have another 10 or 11 days of this to play out. The irony of the situation is that every time Alex Isak doesn't travel to Asia like he didn't, or didn't play in a friendly at Celtic, or didn't stay with the squad, or doesn't train with the squad, or says he won't play against Aston Villa, or looks increasingly unlikely to play against, of all teams, Liverpool on Monday night, he puts the price up of the players that could possibly replace him and help him to get his move. Because Brentford are sitting there now going, right, Newcastle really need Visa. They needed him more than they needed him yesterday even. Other players in consideration, like Larson at Wolves, their price will be going up. So he is, in a sense, making his move harder. The contract issue Ian mentioned there, that I think there was the possibility of talks last summer. Some people inside Newcastle say they were limited because of PSR problems of what they could do at the time. I would also say if Alexander Isak had signed a new contract last year, it would mean absolutely nothing in terms of stopping him to want this move to Liverpool now. The very highest salary he could have got at Newcastle, because of the limitations they have and because of the salary structure they have, would have been around £200,000 a week, miles short of what Liverpool can offer him. Liverpool are trying to assemble a squad that will attack on 4 fronts season after season. Newcastle are not at that level yet, which is why Isak has wanted to move to facilitate the move. However, as Ian said, it's becoming more and more sordid. And as I've jokingly said at the start of this, what does he do next? Newcastle are denying privately that it was said to Alex Isak at some point during the summer that if they get 2 forwards in, he would be allowed to leave. That is one suggestion that has been forcibly denied to the Times tonight. We'll wait to see what plays out from here. It's, the victory in the Carabao Cup was a great moment for Newcastle United. It might not mean so much to other clubs, but it was a massive moment in the club's history. It's whether this sullies that legacy. I suspect in the long term, 6 months, 12 months, when the dust has settled on this, perhaps it won't. But at the minute, it has. It's still, however, not quite guaranteed that he leaves the club. And that's why you see a statement like this tonight.
Ian, when we look at another transfer that's bubbling away, Ebery Eze from Crystal Palace potentially to Tottenham, potentially somewhere else, he is playing and he's playing really well and he's applauding the fans at the end of the game. Do you think that in an alternate universe, if Alexander Isak had behaved in that way, this move would go through? Or is that why he's having to do what he's doing?
I think there's every chance that this move would have gone through had Liverpool, or if Liverpool were to get a bit closer to Newcastle's valuation, and Newcastle were able to source replacements. Martin referred to there the fact that Newcastle have struggled to source the replacements that they want. Talks about Vissa, and that's very interesting because Vissa, of course, is not an Isak type of player. He's not a Sesko type of player. He's not an Ekitike type of player. Newcastle want to replace like with like. And at the moment, that is very, very difficult because there aren't many people. There aren't many number 9s who play the way that Isak plays, who are of that quality. So, in answer to your question, it's very, very difficult to say. But what I can say right now is that Isak's in a corner. He's in a corner now, and to a degree, he's backed himself into that corner, or he's allowed himself to be backed into that corner by taking advice from whoever he takes advice from. And at the moment, there's only 2 ways out of that corner. Liverpool could get him out of that corner by blowing Newcastle out of the water with a bid that they can't refuse. Okay? If that doesn't happen, the only way he gets out of that corner is by talking his way out of a corner. And when I say talking his way out of a corner, I mean by apologising. People might scoff at that. It has happened before. Pierre van Hooijdonk, back in the day, late 90s, went on strike. Actually physically went on strike for Nottingham Forest, went home for a summer after they got promoted to the Premier League and simply didn't come back. Thought he would get a move, didn't get a move, eventually said sorry, came back, scored a goal. They cheated him from the rafters at the City Ground. I was there that night, I remember it. I'm not saying that's the way that it's going to happen, because Isak seems way too far down the track for that. But you never know. Football fans, actually, Newcastle fans, as I understand, are absolutely apoplectic at the way that their hero has behaved, and I don't blame them for 1 minute. However, football fans tend to be a very, very forgiving bunch, and also to a degree a rather malleable bunch. And I class myself, by the way, when it comes to my team, I'm exactly the same. So if you were to get into a situation where you thought, I've just got no choice here, I've got to play, I've got to say sorry. If you were brave enough to do that, don't think for a minute that Newcastle supporters might not accept it, because football fans sometimes just do.
Yeah. You've already mentioned that next Monday, live on Sky Sports, by the way, it's Newcastle against Liverpool. What do you think the atmosphere will be like between the two sets of fans, the two sets of players, the clubs? Martin?
Sorry, what day is it? When's it this way? There's still about 5 or 6 more days episodes of this soap opera to play out, so I wouldn't like to predict it just yet. It would be a surprise if... I say it would be a surprise. There's been that many twists and turns. It would be a surprise if Alexander Isak is a Liverpool player before Monday. If Newcastle have signed a centre forward, might that calm the mood? I'm not sure. The fans only turned on Isak at Villa Park once the game was finished, and then started criticising the amount of money that he wanted from the club. I hadn't even realised, I think, is Monday a bank holiday? So you're going to have this wild atmosphere at St James's Park on Monday night with everybody having been off for the day. There's been fairly raucous games between Liverpool and Newcastle at St James's in the last couple of seasons. This is going to crank it up a great deal. It may be, because tonight is a real mark in the sand from Isak that he is desperate to leave Newcastle United. And I think just the way that it's moving, you might find quite a vociferous reaction against him. I completely agree with what Ian said. I'll throw in the word fickle there. Fans turn very, very quickly if he doesn't get his move. And at the minute, he hasn't got his move, and the clock is ticking on him getting his move. So as I said at the start, he has to use, in his thoughts, every single trick that he can to try and get out of the club, but he might not. From September the 1st, it might be a different reaction. But I think for the first time on Monday night, you might see Newcastle fans start to turn against him. And the fact that it's against Liverpool just adds spice to an incredible occasion already.
Yeah, perfect timing, and live on Sky Sports. OK, that is Alex Isak. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this curious one in the Telegraph. Louis Rees-Zammit, rugby player. I was wasting my talent in the NFL. We'll get into that next.
Just bring us up to speed with where we are in terms of the transfer window. Closes a week on Monday, 7 o'clock this time, not the usual 11 p.m, but still so much going on, lots of activity, and still so much talk about a certain Alexander Isak, which will be such a massive subplot to that Monday night football between Newcastle United and Liverpool. I mean, Merce, listening to Eddie Howe yesterday, he said he hadn't spoken to Isak for a week, and he also described the situation as a lose-lose situation. So come 7 o'clock, a week on Monday, where do you see Isak being?
At Liverpool.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I think... Yeah, Dawes said it a week ago or so. He said after Monday's game, I think that it'll be sorted out, and I think he'll be spot on. I think he'll be spot on. It's got to be sorted out. These players now, ain't going to need the money to pay their mortgage. He can sit there for another 6 months if he wants. You know, they might as well take the money now. You know, he doesn't want to play. He's lost his legacy, and it's a shame on Newcastle, because I thought they should have beat Villa last week. In Isak's plan, they would have won that game, and you know, that would have been an amazing start to the season. So, for me, I don't like the way this is panned out. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time. It won't be the last time. The only one that's gained out of this is Wissa at Brentford, because no one's mentioning him.
Yeah, they're not. And he's, as we've heard from Keith Andrews yesterday, back in the squad today, having not been training with them for a little bit while. I mean, there was that statement released by Isak. So much of this now, Clinton, played out on social media. That's the big difference to how we used to see things. I mean, it still happened. It just wasn't played out quite as publicly. I mean, he claimed that broken promises had been made by the club to him. Are you as confident as Merce is that he will still find himself a Liverpool player come the end of the transfer window?
Yeah, I think he has to. He has to be a Liverpool player, because it's going to be hard to go back to Newcastle. Yeah, they will take him back in if he goes back in and is scoring goals. We know he can score goals, but he's made it plain to everyone, knowledge to everyone, that he wants to leave the football club. I listened to Merce, to be fair, when he was on Thursday. He spoke well about it. You know, the statement that he wrote up. If he's at home there and he's at home and he managed to write that statement, he's very good, because the detail of the statement that he wrote was unbelievable from Isak. So someone's definitely
suggesting it might not have been him.
Well, it might not have been him, because the statement was amazing to come out like that. But he said he's had promises and he don't feel Newcastle
I've stuck to those promises. But then you look at Eddie Howe's interview and you think Eddie Howe's thinking, when he says stuff as well, you're not thinking...
To be fair, he's handled this very well,
He's handled it brilliant. I think it's something to do with the hierarchy. Maybe he's promised by the hierarchy he'll be able to get that move to Liverpool. Hasn't materialised. I think he should have gone about it where he should have still trained, still gone and trained with his teammates, because you still need to keep your fitness, even though you want to get that move to Liverpool. Just get your head down and score goals. But it's fake promises he said he's had.
But could that have been made by the people who were there before?
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a sad situation the way it's going to end, in my opinion. I really do. I mean, look, everyone will go, Isak gets paid all this money. It wasn't too long ago he was an idolised, winning the Carabao Cup, heroes. That's all gone. You've just said his legacy is done and dusted. He cannot come back from this, in my opinion. The only way is, what happens if the deal doesn't go through and Liverpool don't stump up the money and go, right, we're going to pay 130, 40 million pounds what it's going to be. Then he's in limbo. Then what does Eddie Howe do?
So there's absolutely no way for you, if he remained a Newcastle United player come the end of the transfer window, there's no way for you he can rebuild those bridges with the fans. That's done for you, is it? Because if he starts scoring again, surely it changes.
If it's 8 o'clock on the 1st of September and he's still there, he's then going to have to be integrated back. He can't just... Surely they're not just going to put him into the reserves and go, we'll carry on paying your fortunes, you just don't train with us. There's one person who's... No, I'd say one person. There's a few losing out. The fans and Eddie Howe. I really feel sorry for those group of fans and Eddie, because he's having to come up, front it up, do the media, and all he's talking about is Isak. What about the players that are there, training day in, day out? It's all about respect, and Merce, you said, players have done it before, we've seen it, but what you can do is you can go in and train. You might want to leave, it's clear, but just go and train and do the job. You're getting paid. Respect for your employees. It blows my mind that players do.
I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when Seko went to Man United. I think then that's when he lost the plot. I think that's when he's gone, What's his name?
Sesko. You're right. You got
I think that was the one where it was like he went there and it was like, now I've got to go into overdrive. Whether it's the agents told him, but then it's all gone blowing up.
Yeah, but the thing with all of this as well, and Liverpool are not going to mention, Liverpool have obviously spoken to an agent or something that started all of this off.
But I also wonder, Boydie, whether their priorities might just have changed, because Ekitike is settling in brilliantly, but they've been so open defensively. Yeah, but we've seen in their first couple of games.
Simon, you cannot get a player to do what Alexander Isak has done and then back out the deal. It's impossible. I mean, he's totally lost, his legendary status at Newcastle. Last year delivered that cup that they've been hoping to get their hands on for a number of years. They were able to do that. Scored the goal. Was a hero. You cannot. Liverpool have obviously. You're going to have to do something to get yourself out. Because Newcastle, with PSR, but Newcastle don't need the money. They're the richest club in the world. They don't need the money. And this is where, you look at, and I know we'll touch on Nottingham Forest and Marinakis and that later, but you go back to when with Morgan Gibbs-White, stood strong. No, he's not gone. Newcastle could quite easily do the same. They could. But when you look at, for me, Liverpool, I've got a lot to answer for this, because there is no way that you are going in and kicking up a fuss the way that Alexander Isak has if you've not been told we will make this happen.
Does the move happen for you?
It happens. It has to. It has to.
It has to, but it might not.
Well, you can't. You can't. It's impossible for Liverpool, for the actions, to take yourself out of training, to say you're not training. I mean, let's not be kidding. He's getting paid an absolute fortune to do what he's doing. Liverpool are... Listen, we all know what happens in football, and maybe he's got a little bit excited at the time and he's jumped the gun at the start, and then, right, I'm not doing it, because he felt as if he was going to push the move through. But as it stands right now, there's only one outcome in this, and it has to be that Liverpool sign him.
And I imagine it'll be talked about just a little bit in the build-up to the Monday Night Football, which sees Newcastle United go head-to-head with the champions, Liverpool. You can see it all gets underway from 6:30.
Released a statement on Instagram, and this is what it says. I'm proud to be recognised by my fellow professionals with a place in the PFA Premier League Team of the Season for 2024-25. The award's taking place tonight, by the way. First and foremost, I want to thank my teammates and everyone at Newcastle United who supported me along the way. I'm not at the ceremony tonight. With everything going on, it didn't feel right to be there. I've kept quiet for a long time while others have spoken. That silence has allowed people to push their own version of events, even though they know it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. The reality is, says Isak, that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. To now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interests of everyone, not just myself.
Goodness me, a war of words between Alexander Isak and Newcastle United has officially started as the striker tries to force a move. The club have responded to Isak's Instagram statement last night, saying they are disappointed that no commitment has been made to Isak that he can leave. He said that's after claims from Isak that Newcastle had been misleading, breaking promises, and he advised that a change is best for everyone involved. Well, here is exactly what Isak has had to say then. I've been quiet for a long time while others have spoken. That silence has allowed people to push their own version of events, even though they know it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. The reality is that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. To now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interests of everyone, not just myself. Yeah, well, that was posted by Isak just before 9 p.m. last night, and a couple of hours later, well, Newcastle responded with a fiery statement of their own, disagreeing with their striker's views. The club say, "We are disappointed to have been alerted to a social media post by Alexander Isak this evening. We are clear in response that Alex remains under contract and that no commitment has ever been made by a club official that Alex can leave Newcastle United this summer. We want to keep our best players, but we also understand players have their own wishes and we listen to their views. As explained to Alex and his representatives, we must always take into consideration the best interests of Newcastle United, the team and our supporters in all decisions, and we have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We do not foresee these conditions being met. This is a proud football club with proud traditions, and we strive to retain our family feel. Alex remains part of our family and will be welcome back when he's ready to rejoin his teammates."
Saga of the summer, Alexander Isak's Newcastle United future. He missed the game against Aston Villa at the weekend, and there's no indication that he's set to be reintegrated into the first team squad anytime soon. We also understand Isak is not expected to attend tonight's PFA Awards, with speculation surrounding that potential move to Liverpool ongoing. Now, as Isak tries to push for a move out of Newcastle, Johan Wissa is pushing for a move to St James's Park. Like Isak, he missed the start of the season. Now, he's removed any reference to Brentford from his Instagram profile, taken down pictures of him playing for the club, and his display picture is now just an empty black circle. Right, Jamie O'Hara, you're having a little giggle at that. Wissa and Isak, they've been criticised for how they've gone about things.
Yeah.
But do you have any sort of sympathy stroke defence of them?
Yeah, I do, actually. And look, here's my take on it. I understand it doesn't look great for a player, you know, who's kicking up a fuss and he wants to get out. There's been promises made, right? One to Wissa. There's been promises being able to move on, and, you know, to Isak, whether that was a gentleman's agreement, a handshake, whatever it is. They've gone back on that, and now they're trying to hold their players to ransom. What I would say is, there's always going to be Newcastle, right? They're going to be around forever. Brentford are going to be around forever. As a player, you get one chance in a career. You get one career. You've got to try and get the max out of it as you can. If there's an opportunity for you to go and better yourself and go and play for Liverpool, or, you know, Wissa's at Brentford, he goes to a massive club like Newcastle, you're crying at that opportunity to say, give me that opportunity, I want to go. And when a club's, you know, holding you to ransom and saying they want 150 million, or, you know, they want 60 million pound for Wissa, come on, guys, let's be realistic. Wissa done a job for you. You said he could leave. You gave him a gentleman's agreement. You said he could, and now you've gone back on it. You could have sold him for 25 and it would have been done. I just think it's out of order. You know, because when the club wants to get rid of you, Tom, and I've had this, and every player knows this,
Every single player goes through this. When the club want you out, and you've got time left in your contract, they want to push you out the door. They want to shove you out the door and say, go on, move on, thanks for coming, we're off now, we don't want you. Oh, fans, he's got to leave, he should be gone. Right, but when you want to leave and when you want to better yourself and have a chance of going to a massive football club, when you've got one career and it don't last long at the top, you're not allowed to do that. There's no loyalty in football anymore, and, I think, look, it's not easy, but sometimes these things have got to happen. As Roy Keane would say, if you want loyalty, get a dog.
Right, well, Newcastle fans are having their say. We're joined by one now, Newcastle finalist Matthew Eltringham. Hello again, Matthew. Just hearing Jamie's views on that there. You know that your fans made it very clear about what they think about Isak in that game against Aston Villa on Saturday. How do you expect this one to play out now?
Hi, guys. Yeah, the situation hasn't changed. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. It's not good. It's not great for us. We obviously missed the striker on Saturday. We let our feelings be known at the end of the match, as you'd expect. But I know Jamie's just mentioned players being held to ransom. Jamie, I just think that's a really, really big exaggeration. I mean, Alexander Isak, for example, is being paid £140,000 a week to play for a great football club. He's got 3 years on his contract. He's the one who signed that contract. And Liverpool, as it stands right now, are not making the bid that Newcastle deem acceptable. Not only that, the same with the Brentford situation. There are no replacements coming in. You've got to think of the better of the football club. I don't see how a player can be described as being held at ransom.
Well, he wants to leave. He wants out. He's done the business for you. He wants to move to a bigger club. It's as simple as that.
But Newcastle value the player, and you've got to bear in mind we don't need to sell. Yes, it's a massive amount of money with PSR. Of course it is. We are not in the situation of the Man Uniteds, the Chelseas, the Man Cities. But when we don't need to sell one of our assets...
But why would you want a player there who's not happy? He's not happy. He don't want to be there. Sell him on. Get 120 million quid or whatever Liverpool have offered. Take the money, go and buy yourself 3 decent players. Right, well, you've got a player there who don't want to be there. He don't want to play for Newcastle. And whether you like that or not, and it's harsh, that's the reality. He don't want to play for you.
I totally understand that. But again, it falls on this player power conversation of like, yes, he wants to move to Liverpool. I've never begrudged that. Even when I was on last week, we were talking about that. Liverpool just won the Premier League title. I'm not going to sit here and say Newcastle can offer him anywhere the same. The Champions League expectations of Liverpool are very different to Newcastle. But he's clearly been happy in the past. I mean, just 4 or 5 weeks ago, he was commenting under Anthony Elanga's signing post with smiling faces. This hasn't been something where he hasn't wanted to play for Newcastle for a long time. It's because Liverpool have been interested. The media has played up to that massively. His agent clearly wants him to move to Liverpool, which again would make sense. But it's not a case of we sell because Alexander Isak says, I want to go. We need the money that we value him at. I mean, Jack Grealish, 4 or 5 years ago went for 100 million. You cannot tell me that Alexander Isak should be signing for Liverpool for 110 million pound if that's the last bid they made. I think Newcastle need to make a statement with the ownership we have now compared to once upon a time when Mike Ashley probably would have clapped his hands and said, yes, give us the money. We need to make a statement that if you want to take one of our best players as a team at the top of the Premier League, pay the money. And Liverpool fans are continuing to say, just sell him to us, just sell him to us. Well, that's a two-sided argument for me. Give us the money and we might consider it.
But you're not happy, though, right, Matt, with Isak? But you'll take Wissa in open arms. You'll love him when he comes to the football club. Right?
Again, I've got to be honest, I think I've seen that conversation on social media. I think that's quite a lazy narrative because not one single Newcastle fan would claim to be happy about the way this has gone on. I think the social media thing, bearing in mind that is fully him. His agent hasn't taken his social media.
Did you still want to sign? Did you want to sign Wissa in the first place, you personally? And do you still want to sign him now? If so,
I think it's tarnished that, but I think there's a level of realism with football fans. If we're all being brutally honest, and I think Liverpool fans would agree that when it's a player when it's something that affects your football club, for example, the way Isak's going on, of course that's going to upset us as Newcastle fans. The way Johan Wissa's going on, that's because he wants to come to us. Would Johan Wissa, at the age of 28, show the same behaviour at Newcastle in the next 2 or 3 years? No. But the argument we've tried to make to Liverpool fans, and I'm sure that they might be asking the same questions, is if Alexander Isak goes to Liverpool, absolutely smashes it, as I'm sure he would in the next 2 to 3 years, would a Real Madrid come calling? Would Alexander Isak then show the same behaviour? Yes, so I think it's two different situations, but I don't think any football fan can condone the behaviour of the pair of them. And I think
whether you like it or not, there's pecking orders in football. There's a pecking order, and you know Newcastle are a big club in Newcastle, and the problem you've got is when Liverpool come along, players want to move. Brentford, you're bigger than Brentford, so Whistle wants to go to Newcastle because they're a bigger club. The problem you've got is Newcastle fans think Newcastle are the biggest club in the world, but you're not. And Isak's made that, and Isak's just pointed that out to us, and that's just the reality. Trent Alexander-Arnold done it to Liverpool. Liverpool think they're the biggest club in the world. Real Madrid are, and Trent showed that. And that's the reality. There's pecking orders in football. So don't keep a player that don't want to be there. Let him go. Get your money. See you later. Newcastle is still going to be a great club.
But what I would say to that, Jamie, is it's the better of the football club that's the most important thing. So if we sell Alexander Isak with what? 2 weeks of the window to go. We currently haven't got, you know, we talked about Johan Wisse. Brentford have apparently, as we led to believe, asked for more money. So that one might not happen. So you're telling me that just because the player wants to go, we should go into the season, a Champions League season, as we're looking to continue to build, with no striker, just because Alexander Isak has spat his dummies out, he's dummy out the prime.
You've had time to get this. You've had time to get this done. You've had time to get it over the line. You've lost out on Ekatika. You lost out on Sesko. Because you're trying to hold him to ransom, you don't want him to leave, but you've got a player there who don't want to play for you. What are you going to do? You're going to keep him, he's going to come back into the squad, he might walk around.
Yeah, Matthew, sadly, we've run out of time. This could have gone on forever, understanding. We should just mention, by the way, Johan Wisse wasn't given any assurances that he would be allowed to leave this summer. The club didn't do that, but he is, as you know, trying to get his way to Newcastle United. That one is not dead yet.
Breaking his silence and demanding the club sell him. Good afternoon, welcome along to the Transfer Show. Just 12 days to go now until deadline day. Isak's future continues to dominate following his furious statement last night. But where will he be playing his football come September the 2nd?
I want him gone.
I believe he's gone about it the wrong way.
If he's still part of Newcastle when the window shuts, he will be back playing.
His legacy at Newcastle now is gone.
It just smacks of desperation, and Newcastle fans are furious about this.
Just don't see how he gets reintegrated into our squad.
Well, the minute he scores a goal, he'll be lauded again. He'll be forgiven.
Newcastle United will not be held at ransom. Simple as that.
The narrative is painting him as this terrible villain.
Respecting the fans, I think it's just there's no comeback from it really.
Paul, you got 5 seconds. Keep it clean. Your message for Isak.
Get lost.
Wow. Don't sit on the fence. We know Newcastle are keen to sign Brentford's Johan Wisse. Big developments today. More on that very shortly. Bire Eze is adored by Crystal Palace fans and spends time posing for pictures after leaving the training ground amid negotiations with Spurs over his future.
Hello, how are you? Good, you? Yeah, good, thank you, man. Nice to see you. Yeah? Sick. Nice, man. No, nice to see you, man.
You don't get that every day, do you?
I like that. What a way to start
moment.
the show.
Yeah. Nice to see you two. Mark McAdam and Dharma Shepard here. There's only one place to start, though, and that is with the future of Alexander Isak. The Newcastle striker last night accused his own club of breaking promises as he looks to try and force through this move to Liverpool before the deadline, of course, September the 1st. Newcastle responded with a statement of their own, suggesting Isak will not be allowed to leave. So, look, Mark, is the saga that's... well, everyone's talking about, basically, and we heard from those vociferous Newcastle fans saying, get lost. They're not very nice. They're upset. Where are we?
This has been quite extraordinary. I've been covering transfers for a number of years, not quite as long as this man.
Oh.
And, sorry, didn't mean to age you
tell you
there.
about his age?
But I don't think I've ever known a transfer quite like this. Two of the biggest clubs in the Premier League, two of the biggest clubs in world football fighting over one player. You've got noises from both sides. You've got a record... Premier League record bid that has been lodged by Liverpool, rejected by Newcastle. And we're in this situation now where every single day there is a fresh development, there are new noises, there is new information coming to light. And it feels like you have to have a full-time job just keeping on top of one transfer. And our job is to try and be across multiple transfers in the Premier League and across Europe. Like you rightly say, there were two statements last night that were significant. The first from Alexander Isak. Now, the reason why he put a statement on his social media was because last night was the PFA Awards, of which he was in the Premier League PFA Team of the Season. There were 10 players on stage to receive that award and be a part of that presentation ceremony, but there was one player missing, Alexander Isak, who was in the PFA side. And it was that absence that has prompted him to go onto his social media to thank the PFA and the fact that he was in this team. But then, of course, he explained his absence and said he didn't think it was right to be there at this moment in time where there's so much noise and speculation about his future. But then the statement went on, as you alluded to at the top of the show, and he said, the reality is promises were made, and when promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. Newcastle knew nothing about this statement, and the fact that he'd been so public with some of his thoughts and feelings had then alerted them to say, well, actually, we need to put a statement of our own out to try and just let fans know exactly our position on this, because we find it so difficult in these moments because we're trying to reflect accurately both sides of the coin. Yeah. There is always two sides in a scenario like this. There's the Newcastle side, there's the Alexander Isak side. We don't take sides, we just have to try and report the facts as we know them. In their statement, they refer to a couple of things. A, the fact that they were disappointed about his stance and his public statement. There's been no commitment ever made with regards to him leaving this summer. Conditions of a sale have not transpired, and we do not foresee those conditions being met. You can see Alexander Isak turning up to training today around 3 o'clock. He's on his own training regime. He's not currently with Eddie Howe's first team. So therefore, you see those pictures of him arriving. But this is where we're at the moment. So two key statements coming out last night.
You have to look at the timing as well. You said it at the top. There are 12 days of this transfer window to go. Alexander Isak, it sounds like he's getting desperate because he has now got 12 days to effectively try and impact or feel that he can impact an exit out of Newcastle United. Because come 7 p.m. on September the 1st, if he hasn't managed to engineer that move out of Newcastle United, he's staying at Newcastle United, and everything that brings, trying to reintegrate himself into the squad, trying to get the fans back on side. Maybe if some of the players might not be too enamoured by his behaviour, to get them back on side as well. But you've got to say, in all of this, while Alexander Isak has made his statement, Newcastle United themselves, I've described it as a subtle firmness, their statement, because they've actually intimated in that statement that they would be prepared to sell Alexander Isak. If you listen to this, they said, as explained to Alex and his representatives, we must always take into consideration the best interests of Newcastle United, the team and our supporters in all decisions. And we have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. That means they had conditions to sell Alexander Isak, and those conditions were not met.
But the biggest condition seems to be that they want 40 million more from the offer that's been given.
Yeah, but they've also said, they went on to say, as Mark mentioned there, we do not foresee those conditions being met. They then went on to say that after expressing disappointment that Isak had taken to social media, they would be welcomed back into the fold. So they're playing this very, very carefully because they know there are two scenarios at play here. For example, if Liverpool were to come out with this money that Newcastle United want for Alexander Isak, and more significantly, Newcastle United get the replacements that they would want, then there is a chance Isak can leave. But then there's also that chance that Isak is going to stay. Hence why Newcastle United, in that statement, have also said, we are a family at Newcastle United. Alexander Isak is part of that family, and we will welcome him back into that family once he rejoins his teammates.
But he doesn't want to be part of the family.
No.
It's clearly... So the situation is this. He's agitating for the move. The club is saying, well, hang on, it comes with conditions. The conditions are they want more money, otherwise he can't go anywhere. Surely that's the only condition that there should be, because otherwise...
Replacements
as well is key. But Newcastle United, just say Liverpool right now put an offer in of £150 million, which is what we believe is the asking price for Alexander Isak. The condition of sale would be, OK, we accept that, providing we've got a replacement lined up. And that's one of the big problems that Newcastle currently face.
But they're never going to find a replacement like Alexander Isak. So Johan Wisser could be available.
They have been trying to get a replacement, or trying to get someone, in fact, earlier on in the transfer window, to play alongside Alexander Isak. They tried all window. They tried to bring in Benjamin Sesko. And I don't think you can criticise Newcastle United, how they approached this
No, but they missed out. And they missed out on TK to Liverpool, who now could get Isak.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that with regard to Benjamin Sesko, they went all out. They actually bid more, initial payment more than Manchester United. It wasn't a case of Sesko saying, I don't want to go to Newcastle. He just had his heart set on going to Manchester United. Now, the irony of the Ekitike deal is that Liverpool buying Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt, who Newcastle United were actually after, has actually made it a little bit more difficult for Liverpool to get Alexander Isak out of Newcastle, because Newcastle United could have viewed Ekitike as a potential replacement for Alexander Isak, even though it was painted as we want Hugo Ekitike to play alongside Alexander Isak.
But ultimately, though, who wants a player at their club that doesn't want to play for them? No, that doesn't make sense, right? You've got a player that's training on his own at the moment.
But look at the precedent that
of what's
sets
going
then.
on.
Because there could be loads of players in the Premier League that don't want to play for you anymore. And
But that
must
does
happen every day. It must happen every day. Ones we don't hear about either. If they did that, right, you can go for every single player that did that, then they wouldn't have any... You'd have half a squad sometimes, because there'd be like 10 players who can't get into a team. I'm not happy anymore, I want out. But the fact is, that's the role of the owners, the sporting director, the manager in particular, to make sure that these players are happy. And if they aren't happy, of course he's not. But what's he going to do?
He's not happy today. He might be happy tomorrow.
Listen, I am playing slight devil's advocate, but purely because there are Newcastle fans saying, get lost. We don't want you here anymore, because they feel so hurt by the way that this is played out. We'll talk about Eze and the way that that's being dealt with. But you've got fans standing outside Crystal Palace, full view of the fact that Eze could be on his way, still wanting his picture. He's there with iPhones and telling people, you know, he loves them and whatever. So that's all playing out, and this is playing out for Newcastle. It's an ugly situation.
Say here, and I think we'll go into more detail on this later, but what I would say here is Eberiche Eze and the Alexander Isak situation slightly different, because what has happened with the Eze situation is Crystal Palace gave him, Eberiche Eze, a little bit of control by agreeing in his contract that he was going to have a release clause.
Okay.
So they knew that if anyone went in with £60 million plus £8 million in performance-related add-ons, under the conditions and the payment terms that Crystal Palace had set out in his contract, Palace knew they couldn't do anything about it, because that club is then free to talk to Eberiche Eze should Eberiche Eze want to talk to that club.
And has Isak got a release clause?
No. So Eberiche Eze, in his situation, is now saying, right, I've signed that contract, and so I've kind of got a bit of control if a club comes in with that. But I also know that the day before the season starts, that release clause expires. That means, and I've signed this, that the club now have control of how much they can charge for me. So, in a way, he has got no issues with Crystal Palace at all. The issues Alexander Isak has got can't be compared to the ones Eze hasn't got with Crystal Palace, because he believes that Newcastle United made him certain promises that he believes that reneged on. And Newcastle United, for their part, have come back publicly, because he's come out publicly, and they have said that's not true. There was never any conditions for sale or this new contract that they were going to talk about.
I think this goes back to 13, 14 months ago, when the Newcastle hierarchy at the time sat down with Alexander Isak and his representatives, and the idea was floated at about a potential new contract at Newcastle United. And early discussions happened between...
A new and improved one.
Yes.
Obviously, he was still on a long deal.
New improved contract. Right. And there was early discussions between the hierarchy at the club and his representatives about rewarding him for being one of the best strikers in world football. That meant longer-term contract, more money. We believe in you. Paul Mitchell came into the football club and went, hang on a second, you've got 4 years left on your current contract. We don't need to give you a new contract. And I believe that statement last night from Isak is reflective of those promises that were made by the football club.
Yeah.
A new sporting director has come into the football club and said, no, I'm not going to honour what was potentially agreed or those conversations that were started, because I don't believe right now you deserve one with 4 years left on your current deal. And I think that stems, a lot of what happened in the last 24 hours and this summer stems back to those conversations that happened in excess of 12 months ago. And that's where a lot of his frustration lies, because he believes he should be paid like one of the greatest strikers in the world, and right now he's not. And that's where some of the problems are. And I think just one thing I need to say on this situation as well, which I think is important. Newcastle are a huge football club. Huge football club. As far as they're concerned, as far as their owners are concerned, as far as the manager's concerned, this is a destination football club. This is not a stepping stone. We're in the Champions League. We've spent millions and millions of pounds to create the best team we possibly can under PSR circumstances, right? So therefore, you should want to stay here. Players want to come here. And whilst publicly this summer has been chaotic, internally, they're really pleased with the business they've done. Every single department at that football club has improved. And you look at that starting 11 now, Eddie Howe's got a better team now than he did at the end of the season. Isak being in that Newcastle setup is key to them moving forward. And I don't think it's a certainty he goes.
Yeah, and I hear you. And I think that the bottom line is there's a situation on there's both sides to this coin, but I think it's good to kind of hear both sides of it.
Definitely.
What is the situation in terms of, we'll have more on this throughout the evening anyway, but what is the situation on replacements? Wissa.
Yeah, we talked about potential replacement for Isak. Johan Wissa isn't necessarily a replacement for Alexander Isak. I think he's seen more for Callum Wilson, because Callum Wilson left the football club as well. But this one is a pretty unsavoury saga as well between Johan Wissa and Brentford. That is an understatement, but it does seem to be moving. We heard this afternoon that Newcastle United had resumed talks with Brentford. We then heard that a bid had gone in of an initial £35 million plus performance-related add-ons. There are now reports emerging that that bid may have been rejected. We're just trying to get confirmation that that is in fact the case. They had a £25 million bid rejected earlier on in this transfer window as well. As I mentioned, this one has got very unsavoury. There are comparisons to be made, and people are making them between Wissa and what Isak is happening at Newcastle United. But rather like Isak, Wissa believes that Brentford have reneged on certain promises about him being able to leave. And he says he's been in talks with Brentford for the last 6 months about a potential exit in this transfer window. But sources close to Brentford are saying no such assurances have been made. Rather like this Newcastle United Isak saga. But far as Wissa is concerned, no intention of playing for Brentford again. He's removed, remember, all traces of Brentford from his social media channels earlier on this week. And you just wonder, rather like the Isak saga, we don't know how that one's going to end, but you just wonder with this one in particular, has it gone that far that the best outcome for all parties is sell Johan Wissa to Newcastle United, get the money that Brentford want, get the money that Newcastle United want to pay, and then everyone moves on. Representatives of Wissa have been in London the last 10 days, and they are all ready to finalise a deal with Newcastle once the two clubs have agreed. All right, you said everyone moves on. That's what I'm getting told to do right now. We've got to go to a break because we've chatted too much. We will be back, though, and we'll talk more about Abire Eze training with his Crystal Palace teammates earlier today. But will he be on the move? More on that next.